Minecraft is a game that has been constantly evolving ever since it was originally fully released back in 2011. And with the upcoming Caves and Cliffs update, there's a ton of awesome stuff that we have already seen implemented to the new cave generation, the expanded world limits, the lush caves that are now starting to be generated, and a lot of other items that have been showcased or otherwise introduced. The Bedrock version of the game has received the mountain generation to experiment with and kind of play around with. But this all brings the hot button question of when will we see the full version released? And really, the only thing that we have to go off of is when the devs officially give us a date, which is likely not going to be for a couple more months. As with the Nether update, we only got the announcement a week or two before the full release was originally planned. Now, if we look back at how long it took for the Nether update to be fully released from its original announcement, you'll see that it was the span of about 9 months with consistent snapshots going all throughout. And I think it's safe to say that now that we're on version 1.16.5, we are not going to be seeing any further changes or adjustments to the current update or the current version of the game, and all focus is being placed on progressing the release schedule for the 1.17 Caves and Cliffs update. So let's have a brief look at the items that we have yet to see at the time of this recording, as far as items that need to be introduced and my thoughts about kind of what we should expect to see in the next couple of weeks. Again, this is all speculative, so I could be very well off the mark. I don't believe that I am, but time will just kind of tell. Now, comparatively, these two updates, I feel like they're about the same in terms of scale, whereas the Nether was being fully overhauled with the addition of 4 extra biomes and unique mechanics and debris and all sorts of other stuff that take place within the Nether at this point in time. This is comparatively not as intense, but a lot more in-depth for what they're doing with the overworld overhaul of 1.17. And we've already seen a lot of the more technical aspects already being introduced. Again, I mentioned the mountain generation that we've seen in the Bedrock betas, and then there are all of the other mechanics that we've seen implemented in the somewhat weekly Java snapshots. But there are still a couple of things that we have yet to see introduced at all. And those are items such as the clay pots from the archaeology or excavation type quests that can happen. We don't have a recipe for the clay. We don't have any details on the artifacts that can be excavated from there, how those generate, how those work with a little more detail. So we should expect to be seeing those type of items. I expect those to take place possibly after we see the finishes to the cave generation. Once that has been more solidified, I feel like they'll play around a little bit more with that mechanic. We also haven't seen anything regarding the new skulk block apart from the skulk sensor. We've seen working demos of that. We know how that is going to function, but we don't have any of the other blocks or any of the other items that generate along with those sensors, nor the warden. That hasn't been introduced at this point either. With the lush caves officially being generating to some degree with this beta, I feel like something that you should keep an eye out for is in the next snapshot or two, we should see some finalization as to how those work in and integrate with the overall cave generation, as well as the application of the different stalactite blocks, which we've seen how they work. We haven't seen them naturally generating down in any of these caves at this point in time. I do anticipate that as soon as those changes to the caves have been finalized, we will see more of what's supposed to happen with that deep dark area, which is where it was generally understood that the skulk blocks and the warden are going to take place. And if I were to be bold and make an assumption there, I would feel like we are going to see the generation of the skulk take place after the Warden has been introduced. And they could very easily take place in the same snapshot. I just feel like the Warden is something that's going to be a lot easier to flesh out than exactly how they want the Skulk to be generating and interact. And once you have the Warden wandering around different parts of the low world, you can then integrate the Skulk to kind of have that work in along with it. And I could be wrong. It could be the other way around, as we already see how the Skulk is working. Or best case scenario, we see everything of that degree rolled together into the same snapshot when that eventually comes around. Apart from the Skulk, we are missing the goats, for at least from the Java snapshots. We have seen them in that Bedrock and Mountain type betas that have been going around. So those need to make their way over to Java as well. We would also need to see the Mountain generation starting to work, but I feel like a lot of the more technical aspects of the update is being included in the Java snapshots, mainly because Java is, from what I understand, a little bit easier for the developers to work with, and then they make sure that everything transitions smoothly over to Bedrock. And since Bedrock already has a sense of the world generation that takes place, it's a lot easier to adjust how the mountains are meant to show up, as opposed to introducing entirely new mechanics that'll be taking place over there. But from the things that were discussed at Minecon Live this past October, those are really the biggest things that are missing. Of course, we've seen some things from one and the other, but it really should be winding down in terms of what we should expect. Now, because I feel like this is about the same work level-wise, in my guess, I think that the absolute latest that we'll be seeing the full release will be in August of this year. Ideally, we'll see that early to mid-July, as if you timeline that with the announcement of the Nether update, about that 9-month time frame was mid-June when the full release was made. So if you give it about the same time frame of that 9 months from the announcement, then we should, in all relativity, expect to see it at about the same point. Especially where in a video that the Minecraft developers released on the official Minecraft YouTube channel last week, where they talk about the entire process of developing a new update takes about 18 months, and they work a lot on those items behind closed doors before it's even announced to the public. I feel like there's a lot of things that we're still missing in terms of experimentation that have already been worked out, and we have at least general ideas and visuals of how they're meant to work. And there could be additional items that were not showcased in the Minecon Live presentation that still make their way into the full release. So that's just the list of things that we know were at least discussed or introduced that we have not seen introduced or implemented yet at this point in time. But I'm interested to know what your thoughts are. How do you think that the Skulk mechanic will be introduced? Do you think that the next couple of snapshots will focus on finalizing the lush caves and how they're meant to generate, or do you think that a different mechanic is going to be what's introduced in the snapshots over the next coming weeks? We could very possibly have a snapshot tomorrow, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we do see some new mechanics or some refinement of more of the mechanics that have been introduced from previous updates. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, so be sure to let me know what you're thinking down in the comments below. Feel free to leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed the conversation that I'm trying to start with the speculation on when we'll see the full release. So thanks again for watching and letting me take a moment of your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.